So if you've been watching OG's Danger Show for more than a couple of minutes, you know that I recently escaped from behind the granola curtain in California, and I relocated to a mountaintop outpost in snowy Idaho. One of the first things I noticed that was really different from California was the fact that I could buy guns in my grocery store. Now, not every grocery store in Idaho sells guns, but the grocery store that I use has a sporting goods section, and at the sporting goods section, any old guy or gal, OG, girls get to shoot guns too, can swing by and in about 5 minutes pay for a pistol, rifle, or shotgun, put it in their cart, and continue walking around the store picking up the rest of their wife's grocery list. Now, this wasn't my first purchase at the grocery store. I bought several pistols while picking up bread and milk, but this is one of the ones I was most excited about because of all the internet hype. This is called the RXM, and it's made by Ruger and Magpul, who is famous for their very tough polymer products. Now, in case you missed it, I bought this gun with my own money. They didn't send it to me. They're not paying me for it. They don't know OG's Danger Show exists. I met their marketing guy at SHOT Show a couple of years ago, and despite repeated emails to him, he's never once replied back. I bought this just like you would over the counter with my own inflated American dollars. A lot of times in the comment section of my videos, I'll get comments like, "I can't trust no YouTube gun reviewer if he gets the gun sent to him for free." Well, all right, Jedediah, I do get a couple of guns sent to me for free. I buy most of the things I show on this channel. But one thing I will guarantee every single one of you, I'm going to give you my honest review, whether I get the gun for free or spend my own money. And if you don't believe me, go check out the Bear Creek Arsenal video that I just made. They sent me that gun for free, and I kind of poo-pooed on it the entire video. It's pretty clear that Magpul, famous for their super tough polymer products, came up with the frame for the RXM, but the rest of the gun is made by Ruger, and they have a well-earned reputation for making some of the most overbuilt, well-engineered, toughest guns on the planet. And with the RXM, I think they really nailed it, in my humble opinion. But who needs another Glock clone? Not this guy, that's for sure. I've got plenty of Glocks over here on the wall, and I've got more than one Glock knockoff. But this little monster just might be the Glock clone that sends my Glock 19 into retirement. It's priced at about $400, as I mentioned, and give or take 25, 50 bucks. And since the Gen 3 Glock 19 patent expired, there have been a ton of clones out there, and there are cheaper Glock clones. But in my experience, they're not as reliable as a gun made by reputable companies like Ruger and Magpul. I'd heard about these things, but I never had the chance to pick one up until recently when I saw it sitting there in the grocery store, about 50 yards away from the milk and the dairy cooler. We'll cover all the cool things about this pistol, but towards the end of the video, I want to bring up a few negatives in case you're thinking about buying one of these essentially Temu Glocks. Spoiler alert, I've been carrying the RXM for the past 3 months in this Hill People Gear SRK kit bag that I use as my dog walking chest rig. We have cougars around here. And I just feel better about having something with me when I'm out walking the dogs in the woods. And since permitless concealed carry or open carry is another freedom we have here in Idaho, I'm damn well going to take a gun along since I can. Hey, if you want to support a show that tests all the newest tactical gear that will make you look cool at the gun range, you probably want to donate to a different channel with guys that have huge beards, Oakley sunglasses, and maybe one arm tattooed. But if you're interested in gear that doughy middle-aged dads can use to protect their homes, their farms, their families, their cars from the average street terrorists, and one that won't sugarcoat the review just to make some gun company happy, maybe consider joining us over on Patreon. I'll put a link down here in the description section. So first, the frame. Unlike any Glock pistol, the Ruger RXM has a fire control unit that can be taken out by just punching out 2 pins. This lets you drop the FCU, the fire control unit, which is the serialized portion of the gun, into other Magpul polymer frames. Now, right now, I don't know of any of those frames being out there in the wild, but their website shows flat dark earth, black, and OD green available for $40. And I've actually got a pre-order in for one of their OD green copies, but I kind of dig this stealth gray version. But you know, aftermarket frames are going to come out, just like all of those frames that came out for the SIG 320 and the SIG 365 pistols. And this is something that Glock should have done years ago. The grip feels really good in the hand, much better than the squarish Glock 19 grips. And the bottom of the grip incorporates a flared magwell that not only makes reloads just a little bit easier, but it sort of forces your hand up into the highest grip possible. And the grip is nicely textured. It's not too scratchy, and it had a nice round feel to it. You just got to hold one because they feel good. Much better than a PSA Dagger or even the Bear Creek Grizzly. And don't forget, this gun is made by 2 very reputable companies. It's not a cheap Glock wannabe. I don't like reviewing Glock knockoffs a whole lot because they're pretty boring. But this little guy is different, and it's built well enough that I looked for one for a while before seeing one in a glass case at that grocery store. Molded into the underside of the dust cover is your typical Glock style single lug for lights and lasers. Now, why didn't they use Picatinny rails, you might ask? Well, Picatinny rails are wider, and this gun wouldn't fit in a lot of holsters if it came with just a Picatinny rail. And the Ruger Magpul boys wanted a pistol that absolutely fit and essentially cloned a Glock 19, or at least a Gen 3 Glock 19. And just above that, you'll notice a ledge that's been molded into the frame on both sides to rest your offside thumb. Now, high-speed internet clowns like to call this a gas pedal, but I refuse to be trendy, so I'll just call it the old thumb ledge. But if you've never shot a gun with this little feature, it really helps control the nose of the gun under recoil. Now, the RXM frame doesn't have the ability to take any additional back straps or beaver tails, palm swells, or anything like that you've seen with other polymer framed guns. You're stuck with what came out of the box. But again, overall, I think it's a big improvement over the Gen 3 Glock frame that it's trying to replace. The RXM's lower is made by Magpul, so of course it's going to come with Magpul GL9 15 magazines. You only get 2 of these things, but if you're new to our land and somehow don't already own a Magpul magazine, you can find them just about anywhere milk is sold for about $15, so buy a few more. And yeah, the RXM will take Glock 19 and Glock 17 magazines. Internet experts, my favorite kind of people, will tell you never to use Magpul magazines for serious social work. They recommend you always use Glock magazines in your Glocks. Well, this pistol was made by Magpul, therefore it is designed to take Magpul magazines, and so far, after about 500 rounds through this thing, I've never had a magazine-related issue with it. So I feel pretty confident carrying Magpul magazines, and in fact, that's what's in the pistol when it's in the little dog walking pack, slung to my chest out in the woods. But you should be practicing your malfunction drills anyway. Hey, a quick aside. This year at SHOT Show, I met the nice folks from Pitbull Tactical, located in Post Falls, Idaho. I like helping promote Idaho companies that make good shit, and these guys make a really cool mag pouch that expands to hold basically any size magazine. I've used the same mag pouch for thin 1911 magazines and short and stubby SIG 365 magazines, of course my standard Glock mags, and even big old 10mm magazines in these Smith & Wesson 45 magazines. One mag carrier for everything. Now that's pretty cool. I'm a simple man and I like simple products as long as they work. They're pretty much made out of 2 collapsing pieces of durable polymer, and they're held together by a really strong silicone band that wraps around the whole thing. I asked the Pitbull folks how the silicone holds up to freezing cold and extreme heat, and they said they've tested them in all conditions and designed a carrier that will last no matter whatever kind of hell you put it through. The bands don't loosen over time, but if you somehow manage to break one, they sell replacement bands for $5. They come in black, flat dark earth, and OD green, of course, and they clip onto your belt or your breeches really easily, so it's easy to take them off and on when you get home without taking off your entire belt. They make a double style carrier for duty style loadouts, and you can orient your magazines with bullets forward, bullets rearward. It doesn't really matter with this type of universal magazine carrier. I've been using the black one every day for a few weeks now, and it sure makes life simpler if you switch to different size magazines when you carry different guns like I do. Coming in at about 25 bucks, you really can't go wrong with this little thing. They're cheaper than almost every other mag carrier on Amazon, and they're much better built. The best thing is they're made right here in Idaho. And if I'm not mistaken, that's in the United States. So you're not sending your money to a Chinese plastics company. I can't leave you links down here because you never know when YouTube's going to shit an egg roll over links in the description section, thinking that I'm selling guns. But I trust you can warm up your Google machine and find pitbulltactical.com and get a couple of these for yourself. I'm going to keep this black and gray one, and I'm going to give away the flat dark earth and the green ones on my Patreon channel. So if you go over there and want to join us, you're always going to be eligible for some pretty cool giveaways of stuff I have here in the office that just doesn't need to be sitting around anymore. So back to the Ruger RXM. I've shown you how the frame is basically a better Gen 3 Glock 19. So it shouldn't be a big surprise that it fits in just about every Glock holster that I've tried, all my Kydex holsters at least. The trigger guard has a nice little undercut too, helping get your hands up just a little higher on the gun to better control recoil. Now there's no ambi controls on this thing. The magazine release and the slide lock lever are both on the left side of the gun. But you lefties already have your own scissors, so shut the hell up and be glad you're not put on a plane headed for an El Salvadoran prison for your crimes against humanity. The takedown levers on a Glock can be really difficult to activate at times, but the levers on the RXM stick out just a little bit more, so it's easier to get your fingers on them and pull them down to disassemble your gun. The trigger on the RXM is a little squishy. It doesn't really have a wall, but it breaks pretty cleanly right at about 4 pounds on my little Wheeler trigger gauge. And it's a decent trigger, but you trigger snobs out there are going to think that it sucks. Keep in mind, this is a $400 or less gun, and it has a serviceable trigger that will work for almost every self-defense scenario that you and I are really going to run into. Because the trigger is part of that fire control unit, I don't think there's any way of upgrading it, but I could be wrong. Maybe someone out there is working on a way to improve it right now, but again, it'll work for most of us and what we need to do. This is one area that the Glock factory trigger beat the RXM in my humble opinion. And whoever thought I'd say a Glock factory trigger was a little better than anything? The sights on Glocks suck right out of the box. We all know that. They are basically plastic hole protectors that keep your slots clean until you order and install metal sights on your gun. Well, the RXM comes with a steel front sight that, surprise, surprise, comes with a tritium insert surrounded by a white ring that's very easy to pick up in daylight conditions. Even better, the rear sight is a black steel sight that's been serrated to prevent glare. And this is my favorite combo. Dot up front and a blacked out rear. I've even blacked out the rear sights on most of my carry guns because it helps me get eyes on that front dot even faster. Now, I don't think that the steel sights that come on the RXM are actually true suppressor height sights, but I can co-witness them through the bottom of my Holosun 507C in case the batteries ever shit the bed. And I gave away the good part. It's easy to install a red dot optic on the top of the gun because the slot is cut for most common RMR or Holosun footprint sights. They direct mount to the slide without any adapter plates. So here's my short list of negatives about the Ruger RXM. First, Magpul magazines. When you insert them, of course, they lock in there nice. They're made by that very company. But the Magpul magazine tends to leave a little gap around the bottom where it meets up with that flare, and it just sort of pinched my dainty little pinky finger quite a few times while I was out at the range. This is sort of ironic that their own little magazines don't really fit tight and flush because Glock magazines seem to fit a little bit better and eliminate most of that gap. I didn't have the pinching problem when I used Glock 19 magazines. Now here's another one. The optics cut on the slide is generous, but that's not what you want in an optics cut. You want it to be stingy, maybe even steal your lunch money. Ruger obviously tried to make this slide as universal as possible, so it would take as many optics as possible. But look how it leaves a tiny little gap on this Holosun red dot in the front and in the back. And it's cut for an RMR optic, so that means it's cut for the Holosun sights. A good optics cut will let the steel but right up to the red dot, so that under recoil the dot isn't being thrown forward and backward, because this puts the recoil stress on the screws. And we all know those Chinese screws tend to break if they get more than about a kindergartner pushing on them. Right in front of the optics cut, at the rear of the barrel, is a tiny little witness hole, like Smith & Wesson and some others started putting on their guns so that you can peek in and see if it's loaded. The RXM doesn't really need a dang witness hole right there in front of the glass of your optic. All it tends to do is spit carbon up onto the screen of your optic and obscure your vision just a little bit more. And by the way, if you see brass in your witness hole, talk to your doctor and ask him if ogesium is right for you. The last thing I wasn't crazy about was the trigger pull on the RXM. As I mentioned, it's decent, but here's where it gets dicey, at least for me. There's not a real wall to this trigger. Now, some of you think that's a good thing, but some of you get manicures too. We all have our differences of opinion. I, for one, prefer a little bit of a wall to my trigger pulls. It gives me an index point where I can stage the trigger and break the shot with very little effort, making it more accurate, at least for me. The RXM trigger just sort of rolls backwards and then it breaks. And the reset isn't even as good as a Glock OEM trigger. Because every single striker-fired gun I own has some sort of wall to it, I found the RXM harder to shoot accurately. I was actually having trouble hitting steel plates at about 15 yards the first day I took it to the range, and that was kind of surprising. So like dating an ugly girl, it's going to take some time to get used to, but I think with a little work, I'll be able to make this thing shoot just as accurately, just as fast as my Glocks and Smith & Wessons. I've only put about 500 rounds for this thing so far, but it shoots nice and soft. Maybe not as easy to shoot fast as a Glock factory trigger, but it stayed firmly in my hand due to the real nice stippling on the grip. And I only had 1 or 2 failures to feed on the first couple of magazines. Those were the Magpul magazines. After that, it seemed to have broken in because there were no more issues with function. And that's about it for negatives. For about $375 to $400, this thing is still a dang nice pistol. It's because of this price that overall, I think Ruger and Magpul might have just made a better Glock 19. The Ruger RXM would have to now be at the top of my list of recommended pistols. It's just a really damn nice gun overall, and you can use the extra $200 you saved by not buying a Glock to get yourself some ammo and get good with the damn thing instead of leaving it in a drawer with the factory grease still on it. Hey, are you one of those folks who like getting weird glances from strangers on the street? Do you enjoy being ignored by hot chicks in your local coffee shop? Well, consider supporting OG's Danger Show by picking up some sweet swag from Southern Gals Crafts. You can help support the show while at the same time showing the world that you have poor taste in YouTube channels. I'll leave a link in the description section below. Hey, thanks for stopping by OG's Danger Show. You guys stay armed whenever and wherever you can. You never know when you're going to run into a cougar. And until next video, OG out.